Ready to go? So, a number of years ago, I got asked to present and do some work with the health food industry. And just like we have here, we sent out a guide to some health food stores. And what was really interesting is the video set up in front of Healthy Life. And people would walk out of the store and they'd stop them and say, "What store are you in?" They go, "Don't know." They get a receipt in their hand, a shopping bag in their hand, and they've just come out and they're standing underneath the store. Because what had happened, and this happens a lot, and I think your industry has an opportunity here. What happens is we end up having the health food store at Indooroopilly, or the health food store in Glenelg, or the health food store in Rundle Mall. What we don't create is a health food brand. And this is why Healthy Life is no more. Because there was always just a health food store. So what today's about is, in the next 38 and a half minutes, is how do you go from being a car wash into being an actual valued car wash brand? This is something you can learn to do. The question for you is, does it matter? Do you really care? So and you're a process, having looked at this industry, you're very process driven. So what this is about is insights and ideas, and I've known Neil for many, many years, so I've taken from working with a host of different categories, a host of different industries. So it's insights and ideas of how you can go about doing this through the trials and tribulations I've been through for doing it for quite a while, having worked in your industry and worked on in the early stages of a car wash brand back in the day. And also lessons that I've taken from a podcast I host called the Mojo Sessions, where I get to talk to business thought leaders across the country, across the world, who I think are really good at strategy and leadership and brand and people and culture. So I'll talk about some of those people I've interviewed and what I've taken from them that we can apply to the car wash industry. Please don't think that I'm going to tell you about these people and drop names because it's a bit of kumbaya for myself. I actually don't need it. I'm telling you because you may want to go and follow up on these people. And number two is, all I've ever had going for me in my whole life, starting in shopping centres and working through the music industry and so on, is ideas. And if you find an idea from somebody who shares it, it's incumbent upon you to credit where that idea came from and not make it out to be your own. I know my mission is to curate the thinking of the best thinkers in the world, because you guys don't have the time to do it. So I take that on, to find the best thinkers in any category, take out what they've got, curate it, put it all together, simplify it, then give it back to you in a way that you can go and apply it to your own car wash. What's really interesting is there's a bit of age in this room. Alvin Toffler once said, "The illiterate of the 21st century won't be those that can't read and write. It'll be those that can't learn, unlearn, and relearn." There's stuff that we have to learn in this room. If you've been in business for a while, things have changed. Even since I worked with Neil last, which has been 10 years, things have changed in marketing brand. Because marketing brand now also includes your people. That's a big fundamental change, and I'm going to describe how that all works together as a process that you can write down and take away if it matters to you. One of the guys I interviewed is a guy called Barry O'Reilly, Irish guy, wrote a very good book called Unlearn. And that book was all based on Alvin Toffler's saying, which is, the illiterate of the 21st century won't be those that can't read and write. It'll be those that can't let go of what you knew to be true in the car wash industry, to think about, you know what, man, stuff's changed. We're going to think differently about how we do what we do. And I'll lay all that out for you today, if it matters. The first question is just as a really quick, this will be 30 seconds, just with the person next to you. And if you don't like that person, feel free to move. Just for 30 seconds, if you had to define marketing and or brand in the simplest terms, what would you say it is? Turn to the person next to you. It's a really quick conversation. Just want to get a feeling of where we see it is. Really quickly, how would you define it? Turn to the person next to you. You've got 30 seconds. right, good game's a quick game. So, what would you say? Just call them out. What would you say it is? Just call them out.
Emotional connection.
Emotional connection. Good. Yes, ma'am. Exposure. Good. We'll come back to that. Good. What else? What you're about. Good.
Entire experience.
Pardon?
Entire experience.
The entire experience. We'll talk about that tomorrow, but yes, I agree with that. Your identity. What do you mean? Who you are. Good. Yes, ma'am. The feeling. The F word. Do you know what's interesting? If you wrote down those answers, go to your own website and have a look at it. That's the thing. A lot of the stuff we know, we just don't do. I've been through a lot of your websites. You're not doing it. So let this be an audit to start with. That's not my answers. They're your answers. And I would agree with all the stuff you've said. A feeling, an identity, that's the outcome. What I'm going to talk about is the process. It's not just having a nice clean car. You guys are good at the process. What I'm going to talk you through is the process you do it. But do the audit. Go to your own website. Get in a car and go through your own tunnel. What's it like? Is it a good experience? Do the audit. Because the difference today is it's done when we have to do. We have to get some nice shirts done. What are you guys there? The Pulse? Pulse and Waves. You've got to get nice, you've all got kit on. Something we have to do. But now the difference is marketing and brands got to be part of your strategy. It has to be part of the strategy. Because it's as much about off-lot as it is about on-lot, and it's also about your people. And that's what we're going to unpack for you today. I'll give you some example of how that works. I would agree with everything you said. But the one thing we're going to touch on this morning in terms of the fundamentals that haven't changed, it's about what perception do you have in the mind of someone who cares that makes me choose your car wash and not somebody else's car wash. Your tunnels and not somebody else's tunnels. Your chemical and not somebody else's chemical. And you can be the flashiest, the sexiest, the fastest, the cheapest. If I don't think it and I'm your customer, it doesn't matter. Go to your website and look at the perception you're giving off from your website right now. Go on the toilet, look in the mirror of your shirt and go, what perception does my kit give? Because it's long gone from just having a logo on a shirt or a jacket. It's long gone. Those days are changed. Now it's got to be, why should I buy from you? In amongst all the colour. And you guys are all on high street, main roads, and I'm driving along, and man, I'm getting so many messages, let alone the radio, the advertising and podcast, the drifting off I've got in my mind, all this colour. To move from a commodity to an actual brand, you've got to understand what perception do you want to create in the mind of someone who cares. Because the thing is, the customers you've got, they don't care about your brand anywhere near as much as you do. So that's the fundamental start. We have all the nice kit on. The question is, what perception do you want to have in the mind of your target audience to separate you from everybody else? And if you don't have that perception going on, you're actually burning money and time. That's the thing. So many of us are burning time and money. Maybe it doesn't matter. But when you talk about money, it probably does. So that's the thing, is how do we maximize this? And I can tell you, just walk around town. You can see so many companies, restaurants, furniture stores, walk through the shopping centre, they're commodities. They're doing stuff, but it's not getting them anywhere. So what we're going to talk about is, well, how do we go about doing it? Don't think your industry is any different to all the rest. This is a piece of video that we don't know the difference until we start to tell somebody why us and not somebody else. If not you, then who? And the thing is, for you guys, part of this, the competition, is not just another car wash. It's doing nothing. If you can do it with water, you can do it with any category and any industry. So here's the process. You might want to write these things down, because this is just a bunch of questions that you can go through to work out where are you in this process. The first question is, who cares? Who's the target audience? Because if I'm in Glenelg or Tamworth or Vaucluse or Toorak or Hamilton and Brisbane, they may be different audiences. They may be different demographics, looking for different things. Back to how we talk, maybe very different to inner city where people are living in units. There's a different need depending on who you're talking to. The first question is, who's the target audience? Now, what you want to be doing is then creating an avatar. It's a 42-year-old guy who's driving this sort of car, couple of kids, plays golf on the weekend. Create an avatar so we know who we're talking to. The next question is, what perception do you want to create in the mind of that man or woman? Why you? Why you? Just give me one single reason as to why I should choose you and not somebody else. Don't give me a suite of reasons, just center it on one thing, because you've only got so much time in that person's day. They've only got such little attention span. So to create the perception, work out who's got the problem and why you. And it's not just why you as in you or another car wash, it's you or doing nothing. Once you've got all that, then you can start all your socials. You've got a guy coming in to talk about how the digital world works. But that's just the tool to express it, so to speak. Your website, your shirts, your jackets, signage on the road, flyers, brochures, socials. But if you do all that stuff to sell a perception, but you don't have a perception, that's where you're starting to burn money. And you will see it all the time, where people talk about what they do and how they do it. What they don't talk about is why you. When you do that really well on a consistent basis over the passage of time, then you become a brand. The brand is the outcome. The brand is, why do I have this particular brand of golf clubs? Why do I drive this particular brand of car? Why do I drink this particular brand of scotch? Because that brand means something in your mind that differentiates it from every other scotch, every other gin, every other car, every other golf club, every other sports kit, CrossFit outfit, whatever. But just because you got a logo on your shirt doesn't mean it's a brand. It's just a logo. It only becomes a brand when you know who you're talking to as your primary target, and enough of those people agree that's why they do business with you. That's where you become a brand. This is the opportunity for you guys. Can you do it? Absolutely, if it matters to you. The other thing is, if you've got a marketing person working for you and you are the owner of the car wash or the supplier to the car washes, if you don't know what's right, then you can't tell what's wrong. So if you don't actually know what's right, when they're coming to you for approvals to get some more cash to do stuff, if you don't know what's right, then you cannot tell what's wrong and you'll continue to burn money. The brand you create is about a reputation. That's all it is. It's the reputation you have by doing it consistently over and over and over and over. So from today, what reputation do you want to have? Center it on one thing. Then do it consistently and make sure it's visible in everything you do. And you'll see it downstairs. Once you're aware of this, you'll start to see it as you walk around downstairs. You'll start to identify who's on top of this. Who's got a commodity, who's a health food store, versus who's got a health food brand. That's the outcome. So that's where we're going to be going with it. Does anyone know where the term brand actually came from? Where's the old mate in Ariat? You a country boy? Branding itself, the term came from branding, cattle. So this is the other part, is to create a brand, you work out why you, in the mind of who cares, and then you got to brand it in their mind. You got to burn it into their mind over and over and over and over. So every one of those things I talk about is how you sell it. You got to make sure you're consistent about it. You could do it, but the problem is if we don't know what we're looking for, we don't know what's right, we can't tell what's wrong. And you've got somebody coming in, burning money, burning time, burning resource. But if you can't tell, you're not creating the consistency. You're not burning it in. That's why you want one single thing to burn through their mind over and over again. What's really interesting There's two things. Interbrand is this company that value brands. And I was talking to Doug this morning about Apple. They were the first valued trillion-dollar company from Interbrand. When Interbrand did a document saying what makes a great brand, they said when marketing is aligned to the business strategy. Everybody talks about strategy, but brand for you guys, a lot of brand companies like this or categories like this, it's a thing we have to do. Somebody's doing it for us, but it doesn't sit in the strategy. Yet the thing for me, sitting on advisory boards and working through a lot of mergers in the last couple of years, it's a multiple. Like you get this right, you get this brand right. So what is Pulse? What's the promise? Why Pulse? You get that right and you get the customer loyalty. That's a multiple if you want to change the business, sell the business, or borrow more. That's something which is very tangible. And when you're a health food store, you're not going to get the multiple as being a health food brand. So think about how you go about doing this. If you're sitting down to do this, the other thing you have to do is you've got to map the battlefield. So in your area, in your zone, however, wherever the target may live, if not you, then who? And you're going to map and look at who's my competition, who else are we up against? What perception do they own? What are they saying? Because if you're up against a really good competitor who own a position in the market, they actually own an identity, you can't say the same thing, you'll lose. That's marketing warfare. So you've got to map the battlefield. Part of the battlefield for you is people doing nothing. I don't get my car done. That's the thing if you're an operator. So that's the first part. The second part, things have changed. Like the rules of engagement have changed. What I want to talk you through is some of those rules and how they have changed and what we need to be thinking about, which is the opportunity. So let's talk about beer. So a guy I interviewed recently ran a big home brewing website back in the day. A guy called Billy Bross, B-R-O-A-S. He's just launched a book called Simple Marketing for Smart People. It's actually a good book. I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. I haven't published the show yet. So I'm talking to Billy about his backstory. How did he come into being from brewing and doing home brew? Isn't it funny how as soon as I said beer, a couple of the guys leant forward. How did he get into this marketing space? And here's the real kicker for you to think about over the next couple of days. Billy was running this website and doing exactly the same thing everybody does. Doing a newsletter, doing some socials, doing emailers. And he said business was okay. It wasn't really rocking, it was okay. And then by chance, he went to one of these things for home brewers. He started talking to people who were into home brewing. Car wash associated, the car wash industry, you're very passionate about what you do. And so are home brewers. So he starts talking to them. What he found was, the more conversation he created, the real reason, does anyone do home brewing in here? No? You do? So he found, maybe you can tell me if this is true or not, the real reason people do home brewing is because they like the thing when they can open up a beer and go, this is mine. This is Daniel's, true? This is Daniel's beer. This is my beer. Wow, Daniel, what did you do? Well, I used a little bit of this and I changed the botanicals here and I did the brewing process and I used extra yeast and I blah, blah, blah. But it's mine. So once he knew to, number one, create a conversation with his customer, with the target audience, and number two, find this insight as to why they actually do it. What's the hot spot? It changes the game. And if I'm marketing against you as a car wash, it's really hard to compete when you know the story of why somebody uses you, the true insight. But it doesn't happen unless you start a conversation. You see, most of the stuff we do is all one way. It's just we try to promote to get people to use our product. The change today is you've got to create a conversation. A couple of months back, I bought a hori knife. I live on a farm, I grow my own produce. A hori, it's a piece of kit. It's this Japanese knife that you use in the garden. It's really heavy, it's a serious piece of work. Nice wooden handle and this blade serrated on one side, sharp on the other, a real point used in the garden for stuff. It's really a nice piece of work. And I bought it from Japanese Tools. So I bought it online. I thought, it's a hori knife. I'm a Japanese. I want the authentic piece, so I got it from them. It arrived in 3 days. Every day I get a note saying, hey, Gary, it's on its way. Hey, Gary, it's on its way. Hey, Gary, it's just been delivered to you. And I get this thing. It is so good. And hence, great experience. I'm telling you all about it. What was interesting is they then sent me, a couple of days later, like 30 days later, sent me this email. And they said, hey, we delivered it to you a month ago. We're just interested. Have you had a chance to use it yet? What do you think of it? It was such a lovely way of opening up the conversation. I would do it differently if I was trying to open up the conversation. However, the thing for you is, are you opening up a conversation? If you're a supplier with the car wash industry, you open up a conversation with people who use the service. What's changed today is you've got to talk in a two-way communication. It's not just about selling. That's to change from being a commodity into a brand. And that's what Billy did. And Billy set up a process for how you go about creating that conversation. It may not matter to you, but to create real value today, and particularly when you talk to the younger generation, your kids about it, your kids are generating this relationship with brands because they feel as though it's two-way. So think about how you might go about doing this. Now, if you want a process for it, Billy Bross in his book talks about the 5 light bulbs. And I think this is a really good opportunity for you. And I've thought a lot about this for the car wash industry. You may want to take some notes. Those who didn't bring pen and paper, there's stuff at the back, pen and paper at the back if you want to write some of these notes down. Because if it matters to you and you want to create a conversation and you want brand loyalty, this is a really simple method for you to do it. Maybe you don't do it. Maybe you outsource it to some guy who works for you, but at least you know the process and you can audit what they're doing. When you learn about digital marketing this afternoon, this is about what you write and what you put into the marketplace. It's not just about the methods for doing it or the socials. Copywriting and how you relate to the person who's got a problem to create the perception is such an important part today. So here's what you do. The first part is, what's the unacceptable status quo? This is not a long-winded thing. I can do this in 3 lines. What's the unacceptable status quo? How you get that moment where the boss says, can you give me a lift to the meeting? And they come down to your car and it's a mess. Unacceptable status quo. Or the kids are always complaining. Car's always dirty. Wife's always, car's always dirty. That's an unacceptable status quo. The second part is the things they've tried. You've tried doing it yourself. You've tried getting the young kid next door to do it. You've tried going to. So here's what's really annoying me. Here's the problem. And here's the stuff you've tried. Here's what we do. We do it differently. Here's how we do it. Perception. Then you get to, here's the offer. And then importantly, you back end it with, here's the payoff. Here's why you would do it. This is a really simple process to do. I've started following it when I'm working with guys in all sorts of categories. How do you write copy for it? What's the unacceptable status quo? You've probably tried these things. Here's how we approach it. Here's the offer. Here's what's in it for you. Here's what you're going to find at the end of it. So suddenly, this is an easy way to move from just being a commodity in to actually being a brand that starts to have a communication, a conversation with the person who's got a problem. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you're quite happy just having a logo on a shirt and that's it. But there's a big upside if you do this because you start to create true brand loyalty. So that's the first thing. The other thing that's changed is the marketing inside the business. Because back when I first met Neil, this was all about stuff we sent outside the business. It was all about how we get customers to either buy our chemical, buy our tunnels, buy our process, buy our systems. Over the last number of years, you would have heard a term called the Great Resignation, where suddenly during COVID, everybody was bailing. You couldn't find staff. Everybody was on the move. Gallup, who are the global employee survey people, said 80% of people who work for you right now don't love their work. 80%. They don't know where the company's going, don't know why they do what they do, They're turning up. They don't buy in. If you're a company owner, you know that's true. So Gallup just recently said there's a new term called quiet quitting. So the Great Resignation's happened. Now they call it quiet quitting, where people are turning up at work, they're physically in the room, they're physically in front of a computer, but they're mentally checked out somewhere else. 60% of people are going through it. I reckon it's probably higher. You look at the figures on LinkedIn, most of our staff are looking around for another job. And what they're looking for, and this is the critical part that's changed with marketing and brand, what they're looking for is a job that matters. If I meet with young kids, I was in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago, a young guy who's a coder, and I said, if you're being paid okay, it's equitable for your industry. What you're looking for is a job that gives you meaning, a why. He went 100%. Any kids I talk to, what they're looking for is, why do I do what I do? Why does my job matter? Now, what's changed is you can use that same reason it should matter externally and send it out as your perception of why you should deal with us. It's really, this is how it's changed. Because it used to be, back when I met Neil, you have a mission statement and you get up in front of your group and you present the mission statement. It's like a nice kumbaya. And then a week later you say to the boss, what's the mission statement? Oh, it's shit, something about people and, I can look it up for you. Those days are dead. I can tell you unequivocally that people who work with you and around you are looking for meaning of why they do what they do. And I can tell you people who drive past your car wash are looking at, what do you guys stand for? Why do you do what you do? Price will always be an element, and you can position yourself on price, but that's a dog that won't hunt. Where you really create value is when you have a meaning and a why do you do what you do. And this is something I've been following for a couple of years now. We need to understand it's not just about our people. You can actually now use it as a marketing exercise that you can put into the market saying, the reason we are different is because we believe in. It's our mission. And if you're marketing your company like that, and I'm a competitor to you, it makes it awfully hard for me. Because that's something it's about, back to your point, the F word, it's about feelings. What do we stand for? What are you going to fight for? It's interesting when I went into online and Etsy had this graphic where I could get a logo. And it's so interesting. And the reason I had it is because back in the day, it used to be a point of difference was you got your logo and you had a slogan. People would ring me, we need a slogan. Those days are dead and buried. Now, instead of having a point of difference, you can have a point of cause. What are we fighting for? You find that, you engage your people, particularly the young guys. Test it. Talk to your kids at home. They want meaning and they want something that matters to me. It's gone from having a point of difference, which is how I grew up, point of difference, have a slogan, into having a point of cause. What are you going to fight for? What do you stand for? And this is something that goes back. When John F. Kennedy walked into NASA in the 60s, there was a guy mopping the floor. And he said, hey man, what do you do here? He said, I'm helping put a man on the moon, Mr. President. So the guys in your lot, what are they fighting for? Why does it matter? What should they believe in? Why should they do what they do? The difference is you can now not only market to your own people, that same message can be used as a, who cares? Why us? Why? Because we believe in. And I'll give you some examples of that. And we'll talk some more about it. I'll give you some classic case studies tomorrow morning in here on customer experience, some true ones, and you can go and test them out for yourself. So Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. And it was a book, it sold really well. He built a whole career on it, basically. But now it's on steroids. Now it's not just something to have internally as part of your business plan. Now it can be part of your marketing and brand. For those who haven't seen Simon or read the book, here's a quick snapshot of how he came to do what he does, and then I'll relate it back to car washes.
No passion for my career.
Okay.
This was a chosen career. Like I started my own business in a category, in a profession that I thought I wanted to spend the rest of my life in. And to wake up one morning with a superficially good life and didn't want to do it anymore,
Right.
it's kind of distressing. Because when we started, so many of us intertwine our identities with our work. And if I don't like my work, then who am I? So I went through that. And it was the discovery of this little idea that I called the Golden Circle. We all know what we do. Some of us know how we do it, but very few of us know why we do what we do. And I realized I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. And it was that crisis that was designed to do nothing more than help me find my own passion, to get back my mojo, that put me in a path that was unexpected.
So the thing for me is, as a process, just draw those circles. And when you look at your own websites, when you look at the displays downstairs and have a walk around, mostly we talk about what we do and how we do it. Very few people know why they do what they do. When you write those circles down, it's a process to take away and then take it back to work. And that's what Billy Bross did with the home brewers. Why? Why was in the center there? Because it's mine. It's mine. I did it. This started coming together for me back in 2019. And I met this guy, and his name is Evan Hafer. He's a former Green Beret. And he started a coffee company called Black Rifle Coffee Company. I was interviewing Evan. At that time, they were a $50 million company. Started in 2015. This is 2019. In 4 years, $50 million company in the States. I said, how did you do it? What was the strategy? He said, there wasn't a strategy. He said, our company is built on a mission. One single mission. So then I met this guy here, which is Matt Best. He's a former Army Ranger. They're partners. And Jared, the 3 partners in it. I said, how did you do it? And he said, we had no strategy. We just employed the mission. What's the mission? Premium coffee and culture for people who love the American flag. Target audience, first responders. You look at any story online about Black Rifle, stock market, New York stock market, Guardian, look at any story. There will be reference to the fact who's the target audience, first responders. Coast Guards, paras, AMBOs, police, the military. It's all first responders. And if you don't like it, they don't care because they're so clear about who our target is. Premium coffee and culture for people who love the American flag. Joe Rogan, who gets 50 million downloads every ep, he'll do 3 minutes on these guys for free because he so buys into what they're doing. What's the dream? Employ 10,000 veterans. Why 10,000 veterans? Because every 22 hours a veteran takes their life in America. And they're creating a coffee brand. It started in 2015. When I met Evan in the start of 2019, $50 million brand. By the time I met Matt Best in December, 6 months later, $80 million brand. That January, they were a $100 million brand. In 2022, they floated on the stock exchange. As of last night, the valuation of the company is $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion for a company that started in 2015. And it's all about selling the mission. And where it came to light for me was when I was talking to Matt and I went, but how did you do this? He said, we use our mission inbound and outbound. That's the real trick. Daniel, I agree with you. I don't like it, but a lot of people do. Correct.
It just reinforces what you've been saying about it's got nothing to do with the coffee.
And they send me a whole bunch of stuff. I love their merch. I love their merch. I wear it often. But their coffee's an acquired taste. However, the lesson is, go back to the process. Who's the target? First responders. Why? Premium coffee and culture for people who love the American flag. Inbound. Why do they employ veterans? Because veterans know how to execute the mission. That's it. This was written by one of the staff members the day they floated the New York Stock Exchange. And he said in a post, I am honoured to work on a mission-driven company that practices what it preaches by hiring and supporting veterans and active duty service members. You can't just have kumbaya anymore. It can't just be a slogan. It has to be lived. And the reason I love these sessions so much is it all starts with leadership. And if you listen to guys like Jocko Willink, who serve with these guys, he will tell you everything starts with leadership. Business owners are the people I want to work with. Business owners who have control, who can send it down the chain of command, who can be held accountable. But I promise you, do this and it will make such a big difference in what you do. How do you do it? Just find something your people can rally around, that people care about. You know the target audience, walk amongst them, have the conversation. Why do you brew your own beer? Why really do you get your car washed? And ask the Japanese question. Toyota used to ask the question, why question 5 times. I want a clean car. Why? Oh, I want to why? And I think it's about ego and pride and respect. I think it's all those things. Somewhere in there is the juice of what you can do as the mission that takes you just away from price and scrapping it out on the high street just based on, if not you, then who? It's all based on price. That dog will not hunt. This is all very doable. And then you're going to hear over the next couple of days about how you use socials. Get this right, then send it out through the socials. Then send it out. If you look at Black Rifle Coffee Company, look them up online, you can spend half an hour looking through stories from the stock exchange, the people, the causes, what they rally around, the Rogans. It's all centered on one thing. We're going to employ 10,000 veterans. Here's our mission. Here's why we do what we do. And they're consistent and do it over and over and over again. Find an idea to rally around. Who's got a problem? Why you? An idea. But consistency beats intensity. We come to these things, we come out of the gates, we all feel really good, and then 30 days later, it's dead on the vine. Black Rifle have been doing the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out since 2015, when Evan started in his shed on a little roaster where he would roast his own beans to take on deployment. So if he can do it, start with the process, not the outcome. Don't compare yourself to the outcome. Steal from the process. And what will happen is once you're aware of this, you start walking down the QVB, you start looking online at different brands. Once you start doing this, you will see this has become a thing. And brands are doing it without even thinking about it now, because a lot of the great brands are doing it, it stems from the owner. It stems from the person who cares. You can do it if it really matters. What's the payoff? More engaged people, better value for your brand, stronger position in the marketplace, and a more valuable company. That's the payoff to it. And the more you see this and talk to your partner, talk to your kids about it, talk to people who work with you, you'll see more and more examples of companies that are going through this. One of my favorites is Patagonia. Now, you may know Patagonia. They have set the bar so high with what they do. They built their whole brand. Yvon Chouinard, which is French for Chouinard, he's built his whole brand based around saving Mother Earth. Even to the point where in the very early days, he was living in his car, living on $5 cans of cat food, rock climbing. But he always believed in the planet, saving the planet. And so when you go into a store, you'll not only see the Patagonia sign, but you'll see his books which talk about it. You'll see posters which talk about it. His staff will talk to you about it. It's on the tags. There's even a product he'll say, don't buy this product of ours because it's not as good for the planet as this one over here, as they start to roll stuff through. So you will see this rolled out more and more once you're aware of it. But please don't think, I'm not a clothing company. I'm not a. It's got nothing to do with that. It's the process, not the outcome. If there's one thing we can teach children, and we saw this in the Olympics with all the tears, don't focus on the outcome. Focus on the process. And I've seen this done with car wash companies and people who supply to the car wash companies. So I'm just going to leave you with one piece of vision that came from the Super Bowl this year. I'm a bit of a Disney fan. And I thought this was the most beautiful piece of marketing and branding for a company which has been around for 100 years. I'm going to play it for you, but what I want you to do is to listen to the content of what they talk about and see how this is the most beautiful 30 seconds that summarizes all the things we've done. Yes, it's Disney, but steal from the process, not the outcome.
Open your eyes.
Think of the one place you've always wanted to see.
This is where our magic comes from?
They say if you
dream a thing more than once, please, 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 it's sure to come true.
Everything you see exists together in the great circle of life.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
In every job that must be done, there is an element of fun.
I told you she was tricky.
Life is full of possibilities. What do you want to be remembered for?
The world is in our hands, and we gotta do something with it.
I just want to say a word of thanks to all the artists, the workers, and all of you. The young and the young in heart. You helped make this dream come true.
Don't say that's Disney, because Walt Disney, when he was a kid, couldn't afford a new pair of shoes, walk around with holes in his shoes. That's where he started. Take from the process. What did you hear in that commercial that sums up the stuff we've talked about today? Just call them out.
They're storytellers.
Storytellers. They're absolute storytellers. You can do that. You can do storytelling. Absolutely. What else? Open your eyes, exactly. The illiterate of the 21st century won't be those that can't read and write, those that can't learn, unlearn. Open your eyes up in order to relearn. Very good, thank you. What else?
Make you feel like there's no problems in the world, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And that's part of your thing, is taking someone's problem away from them. That's what you do. You take someone's problem away. And I'm a customer. You take my problem away. Make it easy for me. Good, excellent. It's a nice one. What else? Dream. Pardon? Dream, absolutely. And any brand in this room, if I was working with, the first question I've got is, where do you want it to be in 3 years' time? What's the dream? And if you've got a marketing person working for you, with you, or an agency, ask them to tell you, where could this brand be in 3 years' time? Not numbers and metrics. Where are you taking this thing to? That's where it becomes part of the strategy. Absolutely. Beautiful. Good. Anything else? Open your eyes. Good. What else? You know something that's really interesting with this, the thing I took from that? Disney's 100 years old. Sometimes you have to look back to work out what you're already doing really well and the perception you've created. We're too often about the next post, the next sale, the next whatever. We're very driven by the next thing, the next outcome. Sometimes you got to look backwards. And if you know what you're looking for, all the answers are there. You just need to have somebody around you who'll ask the right questions to take you back and work out. Because chances are you already have a perception, you just don't know it. And all you need to do is find that thing and build upon it, as opposed to starting from scratch. Sometimes you got to look back. Good. Is there anything else you saw or heard that you want to raise, bring out?
That will give you the trust to tell the story.
Absolutely.
They've told you stories time and time again over the last 100 years. They're going to continue to tell you stories, and they're great stories, as in you saw people kissing and whatever else, all romantic and little kids and whatever else. We will give you a good story.
Absolutely. And what's interesting with that, for Mr. Emerald Car Wash, what's interesting with that is how they're telling those stories. Because Bob Iger, who wrote an excellent book called Ride of a Lifetime, if you want a really good read, particularly for Christmas time, that sums up all the stuff we've talked about for a legendary brand, Bob Iger's book, he was the CEO of Disney, Ride of a Lifetime, it's a cracking read. What was interesting was that he knew he had to look after the legacy of Walt Disney. He was also there when they bought, pop quiz folks, what did Bob Iger bought? What? Pixar, correct, nice, good work. What else? Star Wars, nice work. And? Marvel. Pick of the board, whose face would you like? And they're different to people kissing and hugging. But they're still tied back to storytelling, dreams, entertaining. And their big dream that Bob Iger set was, we want to be one of the leading production companies of entertainment in the world. fits on from what Walt said was bring happiness to millions. So you can change what you do with the tunnels, you can change what you do with chemicals and stuff, but it's got to fit back, always got to feel back to the... And the last thing I'll leave you with, I'm going to open for questions, is how do you want to be remembered? So you can reverse engineer it. You can reverse it in the future, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, whatever distance you've got, 12 months' time. What do you want to be remembered for? And then you start to work backwards. How do you want to be known? That's the marketing part. Do it really well, then you become a brand. But you don't become a brand just by having a logo on a shirt or a sign on the street or a nice billboard that does not make the brand. You talked about it. Have a vision for the future of the brand. What's it look like in the future? Play the long game. Today, too much of the stuff we do, particularly in socials, is the short game. It's just trying to get people in the door in the next day, the week, the month. Play the long game. It's a bit like how it used to be in the banks. They put money in and it builds compound interest over time. It's changed. Tell stories. Know who you're talking to. Look back. And then what we're talking about tomorrow is the customer experience. That has become a massive part of all the stuff we're doing here. And I got my own take on the customer experience and how you might take a process like that and apply it to your own business. So we start a bit early, so we have some time, and I'm happy to take questions if you have any questions, which is the French for questions. Anybody? Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that the mission statement was dead.
Yep.
And now we're talking about an actual mission.
Yep.
Could you just help explain the difference?
So, you know, back when we were growing up, you had to have a mission, vision, values. You design them, somebody designed them for you, put them into a business plan, stand at a meeting, you present them on the PowerPoint, yeah, it's all good. No one lived them. No one cared. You grabbed the executive of the board and said, what's the mission? Where are we going to? What do we stand for? No one remembered it. It's still happening today. That's why we have mission, vision, values. I even don't like the terms. It's different today. And that's why I say it's more, what do you stand for? What do you believe in? What are you going to fight for? That's what the young kids coming through are looking for. Correct. And then you've got to do it over and over and over. The reason I love business owners, and I work with business owners now to do this, is to find that thing, but then I work with them weekly and fortnightly for the next year to embed it. Because if you as the leader don't do it, it's a dog that won't hunt. And that's the difference. That's where it's changed. But back to the Black Rifle Company, you can do that inside the company and also outside the company. Get it right inside, then you can start to... Yes, sir?
So KFC, if their slogan, finger licking good.
Yep.
Are they doing it wrong?
Are they doing it wrong?
Yeah.
Finger licking good's been around for 40, 50, probably longer, since I was a kid. Are they doing it wrong? No, if it's working for them. But when you look at how people and people's beliefs in health and wellness and how they're seeing through finger licking good, what good means, I'd be looking at that conversation. Would I be changing it? No. But I'd certainly be looking at how I express that and what the business is doing in terms of Black Rifle might have shit coffee. I'd be saying, well, do we have a problem here? When you've got legacy, like lower prices just the beginning at Bunnings, would you change it? No. But you may change how you express it. But it'd also be then saying, what does that mean for the people who work here? So that's where I'd be starting to break it down. Is it wrong? No. You've got an enormous amount of brand capital in that because you know off the top of your head and most people in the room do. Would I change it? No, but I'd be certainly thinking about it in the economic climate we have, in the health and wellness climate we have. Is that the right message and how would we express it? That's where I would be going with it. I don't like changing things for the sake of changing, which is why I say always start with looking back. Because chances are you're already doing something really good. You're just not using it properly. Any other questions? Queries? Or would you like to know, what haven't I explained properly?
You said my point of difference
Yep.
is sort of dead as well. What do you sort of mean by that, mate? Because I would have thought if your competitors, you've got to stand out a bit from your competitors.
Point of difference in terms of people have a logo and a slogan. That's what they think is their point of difference, is the slogan. Where it's dead is in, you've got to test that thing today to go, does that mean anything in the mind of the target audience? Do we really have a reputation for that? Are we believed that we do that? If it's just a hollow thing we wear on our t-shirts and it's got no real traction, we don't follow through on it, we don't explain it, we don't have a conversation, chances are your people don't know it, your people don't believe in it, and neither does the customer, in which case it's dead on the vine. I'd much rather, now it's not to say you can't own price. You could be the cheapest, you could be the fastest, no doubt. The question is, do you? And just by saying it, do you own the perception of it? That's what I'm saying. But a cause and what you stand for, it has much more traction for internally, much more traction for the guys on the lot. It's going to capture more people's attention in the marketplace, the target audience, if you believe in it and you demonstrate it. So change from just having a point of difference and thinking about a point of cause gives you a lot more value. But if you have been doing it for 25 years and you're notorious for being the cheapest or the fastest, stick with it. But then work out how you start to build a conversation to reinforce it. But just to have a slogan, which is why I think that slide's so interesting, just a slogan on a shirt doesn't mean you've got a point of difference, doesn't mean you own a perception. And that's what I mean is dead. Because back when I was working with Neil back in the day, that's what we did. And if you had it on your shirt, that was enough, and you put that everywhere. The question today is, how do you bring that to life? Is it believable? Do I have a reason to believe it's true? If not, then find a point of cause. Does that make sense? And prices, there's no loyalty in price. You know that. When you're a commodity, there's no loyalty in price. But you could own price. You know, you go in a supermarket, there's a lot of big brands that are based on price. But there's no loyalty. Because when someone else drops their price, then you're good. This other, yes, sir.
You talked earlier about the value of brands, business value or a multiple, like turning that into dollars. Can you talk more about that, and even if there's a general guide as to how much more will your business be valued, or how many more cars are we going to wash?
So this question gets brought up quite a lot by business owners.
I get asked it all the time too.
If you are selling the brand and you have got a conversation going with enough people, and or you do the right research about people's loyalty to the brand, you may have a loyalty program that runs that creates not just regular, hey, do 10 times, get one free, but creates a conversation. If you've got a conversation going through socials, all those things mean that you have got a value of the loyalty you have, which then when you look at the forward projections of revenue, it's pretty solid because it goes from just transactional into there's a relationship. So the only way to truly measure it, I suspect, is to do research on it, where you employ somebody to do that research, where the difference between doing nothing or going to competitors, or how people see you, what they like about you. You may go down that track, but I think you can do and build an argument that if someone's coming in to buy your business, if they've done their due diligence, they should have walked the streets, mapped the battlefield, and also if you then show your socials, the conversations you have, the feedback you get, that should build an argument to say we have a loyal customer base, as opposed to just being transactional. But if you want tangibles, you'd need to do some research.
So you might be able to look at, so essentially it comes down to your repeat business, which is your value, and it's repeat because they believe in that brand, or
correct,
some loyalty to you.
It's repeat business. Why is it repeat? If you can say you get a conversation and there is a two-way communication going in between you, and there's a company in the States doing called Retention Express. And they're an outsourced tool that car wash in America use to build that relationship. So you don't have to do it, but they're spending all day long, not just answering calls and can I help you, but actually having a conversation. That's a tangible. People could say, we've been doing this now for 2 years. Here's our data, here's our feedback, we've recorded these conversations, here's what Mary you know, blah, blah, blah. That's a tangible you can use. I'm sure there's people here that do it, but they just happen to be doing it. They were at the big car wash show in, was it Nashville? They do it. So it's not just repeat business, that's transactional. It's also that conversation you have, which is why I shared that hoary enough, is to start that. That's where the real value is. Yes, sir.
So, considering that Australian market is much smaller than the US, and we're not that picky to choose a customer segment, how do we make a brand meaningful and attractive to more than one customer segment?
So, the first thing I'd start is make sure you own a small customer segment. So Barry O'Reilly, who wrote Unlearn, I said, where do you start? He said, think big, start small. The first thing I'd say is, do you own anybody? I'd start with who. Because once you own that, even the big brands who will say, we will sell to anybody, when they get attacked, will always fall back to core target. So I would always fall back to, give me the avatar of that person, that perfect person. Once you own that person, then you can start to do this. If you get somebody from outside the target who wants to do business with you, absolutely do business. But all your material you send out, the visuals, the tone, the conversations are based around a target audience. One of the mistakes is we want to sell to everybody. I'd always say, let's think big, let's start small. Who's the core target audience? Do you really own them? How much is in that we don't own yet? Then I'd start saying here. And also some of those targets may share a similar perception, but you might express it in different ways to them. Do you know what I mean? Somebody living in an apartment block in the city here may be very similar to a target of somebody who lives in the outer suburbs who's still in a block of flats. So there might be different targets demographically and geographically, but why they want to buy from you is the same. But I'd be careful trying to be all things to all people. And I don't know it's right now, I'd be worried about Australian market being so much smaller than America right now. I'd be saying, let's map the market here first with the possibilities, have a dream of where we could take it in the future, but I'd be starting with who do we own? If we own anybody, let's articulate that. If we do own somebody, then the next question is, does it make sense that these people would also use our product or our service? And that all comes back to perception. We think we can expand. We expand on capabilities. We don't expand on perception. It's got to make sense that we are specialists in these people, but these people could also use us and feel good about it, and it makes sense to them. Good.
You said that it's the young market, it's the newer market, the one that we're trying to now push into to try to drive forward. I agree with it to an extent, but I also found that it's the old market is one of the bigger markets that we run through, primarily because the newer market is so tied up in social media, in networking systems, or the rest of it, that they don't start the conversation anymore. They don't talk to each other left to right and everything, where the older generation still do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with you. The younger kids don't think they do the conversation, but they do. In their own mind, they do. And they're looking for connection. They're looking for certainty. And they're looking for brands that stand for something. So I think you're right in what you're saying, and I think having the mission or cause is particularly important for those younger kids right now who are going to be your target market in the future. It's not to say that older demographics are looking for the same thing. But particularly with staff members, the younger generation are driving the change, is my point. Any other questions, queries? Yes, ma'am.
Brightly coloured ad, like yellow with red writing and so forth, do you feel that would attract the younger generation that is constantly all on their phones faster than just getting a black and white ad?
I think there's two parts to it. Number one, I'd go back to what's the palette for the brand. Yeah. So whatever I do, I'm posting, I would want that to be a representation of the brand. So if I find the brand, I drive past the brand, I come in contact with the brand, it makes sense because I know what I'm looking for. So I wouldn't be going, hey, use these colours, they're better than, I'd be saying, what's the brand stand for? What's the, if the guys from Pulse are green and green tones, that'd be my palette. Because then it's a consistency. And so I'd be looking at what's my logo, what's my identity. Then I'd be using that through my stuff, but it has to build a storyline. And I think one of the things, I'm sure the digital guy will talk about this when he comes up here, is that there's going to be a consistency in what you'd like, a feeling or a tone. But I want that to match up with the sign, so that if I'm a new customer to you and I stumble across you, when I drive in, I go, that feels familiar. But I certainly wouldn't be chopping and changing my stuff. It's consistency beats intensity. I'd be doing it consistently over and over and over again. Good. Doug, we done? Thank you, guys. Tomorrow we're talking about customer experience. I'll give you some examples of some brands that I've worked with, the good, the bad, and the ugly customer experience. So thanks, mate.
What time do we have? Look, thanks, Gary. I actually put Gary on the spot, and he did about a half an hour longer than he was down to do. So I really